Justin Trudeau has killed free speech.
I am scared.
This is such a sad week for Canadians, and I cannot believe that it's come to this.
Welcome to another episode of TikTok videos. I'm scared already. I don't know if you're feeling the way I'm feeling right now, because scary. What is going on? No access to media, no access to any Google link in Canada. All news to be filtered before Canadians get to access them. No Facebook, no Instagram, no. So where are we going?
This is pretty crazy. So Facebook has announced that it would be blocking news media from Canadians on the Facebook and Instagram platform after our federal government passed Bill C-18, mandating that big tech companies pay content fees.
Breaking news and a major move by Google today, and it's ongoing and ugly showdown with the Canadian government. It's all about paying for news content. The tech giant says it will remove all news links in Canada for all of its Canadian users because of a new law that forces digital giants like Google to pay media outlets for the news content that Google uses, shares, or otherwise repurposes online. The company says its search engine will no longer carry news links in our country when the Online News Act comes into effect by the end of this year. That's the law that requires tech companies to negotiate deals to compensate media outlets such as the Globe and Mail, CTV News, CBC, for news content that they take or repurpose on their own platforms like Google News. The law, of course, is meant to help the Canadian news industry under a lot of pressure these days by making sure it gets proper compensation for all the work it does. The Prime Minister says Google is using bullying tactics. It does come after Meta, and the company, of course, owns Facebook and Instagram, said it too would remove news from its platforms. It's also ending existing deals with local publishers. And it's also terminating a contract for a program that it has with the Canadian press to support young Canadian journalists. We should point out that the Online News Act comes into effect by the end of this year. That's the law that requires tech companies to negotiate deals to compensate media outlets such as the Globe and Mail, CTV News, CBC, for news content that they take or repurpose on their own platforms like Google News.
This is such a sad week for Canadians, and I cannot believe that it's come to this.
This is meant to help the Canadian news industry under a lot of pressure these days by making sure it gets proper compensation for all the work it does. The Prime Minister says Google is using bullying tactics.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Then you should leave your thought in the comment section, because it's about to go down. What's your thought on this? Is there any kind of conversation that you're also thinking about at this level? So this video is a gathering of different opinion of citizens of Canada and what they think about the whole thing. Yeah, so different opinions. Sama.
Here, in case you don't know who I am, hey, my name is Melina. I worked as a Canadian TV reporter for some of your favorite media organizations for the past 10 years, and then I quit my job to become a full-time content creator where I help content creators learn what it takes to go from part-time to full-time. Justin Trudeau's Bill C-18 officially passed. Now you can no longer find your favorite news stories up on social media. I cannot be the only one trying to go and find news on Instagram and get this result. People in Canada cannot see this content. In response to Canadian government legislation, news cannot be viewed in Canada. Yay! And I checked CTV News Toronto, same thing. And because I do live here in Montreal, I wanted to try a French media. I typed in La Presse, and look at what I got. This is truly a sad day. And don't get me.
And that's why Canadians are doing better than they were before.
Where are we doing better? Where? Now that you've raised gas another 15 cents, now that you've raised natural gas prices for home, so now that you've raised alcohol taxes, where are we doing better? Where? You're so fucking delusional, it blows my mind. I don't like getting into politics, but holy fuck, you're stupid. And if you voted for this, oh my God, you are single-handedly fucking Canadians and then going, we're doing so much better. And then on top of that, you ram Bill C-11 through Parliament to restrict our access through the internet so you can mitigate what comes into Canada. You are fucking delusional.
But this is now beyond the TikTok ban threat.
but entire content on internet on any platform, even if it's Reels on Instagram or YouTube Short. You know why? Because people have found a voice. Anybody can literally pick up the phone and say the truth.
Like, I don't know if we're allowed to impeach him, but we gotta do something because this isn't fucking right anymore. This is so fucked up. I don't even want to fucking live in Canada anymore. And like, you do all this right in tax season. So it's just like, oh, we're gonna fuck you completely, but you owe us money. We're gonna increase everything that you purchase, and then you still owe us money. Like, listen, I'm just saying France is setting a really good example right now. And I'm not saying we should copy what they're doing, but it's a pretty fucking good idea right now. Because clearly nothing we're doing as Canadians is changing anything. It's no longer left versus right, liberal versus conservative. It's literally us versus them because they are fucking us. Watch them take everything from us in the next 10 years. Watch them take everything from us.
Wrong. I understand that we need to keep Canadian news and make sure that our Canadian identities stay true to us, right? I get that. But is this the best way? This is going to allow fake news to take over on social media. And I've seen so many comments already saying that you've stopped watching news already before this bill, which scares me because if you're already not Googling and searching news, who's to say Canadians are going to do that now that there is no more news on social media? How are we going to make informed decisions? How?
About 5%. If they search CBC News, for example, they get a message like this.
Oh, really?
This is the Montreal Gazette.
They're hiding the news from us.
So it looks something like this.
I was seeing information before, but now you cannot access the information.
If that happened to you, what would you feel?
I would be definitely upset. It's not free speech. It's not letting you see what the news wants to project. And then you also wouldn't get the news and everybody else would be in the loop and you wouldn't.
Why are Canadian news sites being blocked in Canada?
Canadian news sites, including Press Progress, are being blocked by both Meta and Google in response to a controversial new Canadian law, Bill C-18.
Bill C-18, also known as the Online News Act, requires search engines and social media companies to negotiate multi-million-dollar deals with Canadian news organizations as compensation for displaying hyperlinks to their sites. The federal government says that the bill was intended to support journalists and take on big tech, but it has had the opposite effect by actually breaking the way that the internet works. Critics say that the bill is fundamentally flawed. In response to the bill, both Meta and Google said that they would simply block access to Canadian news sites as a result, and they've already started to do this. Even news about Canada will yield results from the United States.
According to Narwhal reporter Fatima Syed, if you search Canadian wildfires on Google, the top results are from US outlets, including CNN, CBS News, and The Guardian.
This is because the online news blackout won't apply to US outlets covering Canadian news. This could have huge implications for Canadian news outlets and change the way that Canadians consume their news. University of Ottawa law professor Michael Geist says that the legislation is deeply flawed and that this outcome was entirely predictable.
I'm actually reading about this on Choke Point Capitalism right now, but I can't show you the book because I'm reading it as an ebook. Anyway, whatever. So they more or less have a monopoly on what news people see. 62% of adults get news from social media, Facebook and Instagram, and even more get news by searching news about X on Google. Mind you, YouTube also owned by Google. So for Canadians, is Google, this is completely cut off. Google is no longer showing news sites, either big or small. You gotta either fucking Bing it or type in cbc.ca, and Meta is threatening to do the same because just yesterday Canada passed Bill C-18, or the Online News Act, saying, hey, if you're gonna monopolize the news, at least kick some news organizations some bucks. Anyway, they're not the first ones to do this, or, whoa, where'd that come from? Or to be threatened by big tech. Australia enacted the News Media Bargaining Code in 2021. Both Google and Facebook threatened to wipe news from their platforms, and Meta actually did do that, but it didn't last very long, and eventually Meta and Google paid up after negotiating with the government a little bit. But in Spain, it was a very different story. They were trying to force Google to pay up, and instead Google just blocked Google News for 7 years. But I'm sort of reserving my opinions on C18 until I learn more about it. What I do know is this demonstrates our utter lack, just toothlesser than a baby, of antitrust enforcement in Canada and the US. For example, Facebook, now Meta, literally bought Instagram to wipe out competition, which is something that would have been unheard of a generation ago. Now allowing a handful of stupid, huge companies owned by Mark Zuckerberg to control our entire lives like a really shitty remake of The Matrix.
In response to Bill C-18, Google and other tech companies are no longer to make available links to Canadian news stories. The Liberal Minister of Heritage says this is going to put Canadian lives in danger. So let that sink in. The Canadian government has put a bill in place which they think is putting Canadian lives in danger. Boy, they must really love us.
Now, Facebook is choosing to block Canadians' access to local news instead of paying their fair share. That's unacceptable. Canadians need to be able to access news. It's fundamental to our democracy. We're not going to put up with Facebook's bullying.
Wait a second, Mr. Trudeau. You're asking Facebook and Google to advertise for local news such as CBC and Global News, and Facebook and Google should pay the fee? If small business like myself want to advertise on Google or Facebook, I have to pay Facebook, not the other way around. So stop playing the democracy card here. This is simply business. If you really want to help local small businesses, you can pass bills to force the American tech giants to contribute more to the Canadian economy. This can be forcing them to use only Canadian solution providers or find a way to make them pay more taxes. Then you can give this money back to the small businesses as grant.
Woo! Canada! Shit's about to go dark for you. So Meta is to remove the news from Facebook and Instagram in Canada after Trudeau passed a law forcing tech giants to pay media outlets for their content. How dystopian. Meta confirmed Thursday that it planned to comply with the Online News Act by ending news availability on Facebook and Instagram for its Canadian users. Canada's Senate passed the bill Thursday that would require Google and Meta to pay media outlets for news content. Meta would not offer details about the timeline for that move, but said it will pull local news from its site before the Online News Act takes effect. It goes on to state that we repeatedly shared that in order to comply with the bill, which is named C-918, which was passed today in Parliament, content from news outlets, including news publishers and broadcasters, will no longer be available to people accessing our platforms in Canada. Good old Zuckerberg. Canada nice turned to Canada commie real quick. Listen, the United States has got its problems. We were not the good guy in a whole bunch of situations, right? Our administration is trash, our country is divided, but I wouldn't touch Canada with a 10-foot pole and you push in. They had the strictest COVID restrictions, people driving up and down the highway in their Canadian cars with their masks on by themselves, Canadian government coming out and running over that poor old lady with a horse. America's got its problems. But I'm glad that I live here. Of course, that's not to say that we couldn't pass some dumb shit like that in the future. In fact, it's probably coming. Or maybe it's already here and it's just hidden under guides of community guidelines. Sorry, Canada, if you get your news from Facebook and Instagram, you're probably gonna have to migrate over to Twitter or TikTok. Kinda. Anyway, carry on.
If you just saw this pop up on your phone and you got concerned, let's talk. This means that Google and Meta, Facebook and Instagram, are going to be blocking any sort of links leading to news articles for all Canadians. This is happening because of Bill C-18. Trudeau says that Bill C-18 was introduced in the interests of media, but I actually don't think that's what he's trying to do. Bill C-18 says that tech giants like Google and Meta will have to pay publishers for their content, which means that large mainstream media companies like CBC will be able to strike a deal with these tech companies, but independent press sources might not. Bill C-18 is going to be a huge threat to independent press. Now, what do I mean by independent press? Independent press sources are media outlets that are not bought out by any large conglomerates, which means they're powered by the people and don't really have any vested interests in reporting misinformation or not reporting something that's really important. So my opinion here is that Trudeau is trying to censor the media outlets that won't sell out to him, the ones that are actually telling the truth of what's going on. Here's how you can continue to support independent media outlets and continue to get the news that you want. Step 1, and there's just one step, subscribe to their email newsletters. I'm going to share some of my favorites right now. Number one, my all-time favorite, The Narwhal. They report on Canadian climate issues. That's their main focus, and I absolutely love them. They tell great stories, and I'm sure you're going to care about what they have to say. Sign up for their newsletter. Again, excellent reporting, climate issues, social issues, all the current hot button topics. Sign up for their newsletter. The Walrus is also one of my faves. Really great opinion pieces. Let's go. Sign up for their newsletter. And lastly, The Maple, particularly good at political issues. Unbiased. We love it. Sign up for their newsletter. I've also included some other favorites in the caption. And of course, my account is going to continue to be a place where you can find climate news. I'm going to keep sharing their incredible work. I'm looking at you. Did you sign up for a newsletter yet?
This is the end of our video today. Subscribe, share the video. Also, give me some kind of suggestion.